welcome to the next installment of the U.S. Navy Band's Foundations for Success series. My name is Chief Musician Colin Wise, and we are the United States Navy Band Brass Quintet. It's our privilege to spend some time with you this afternoon. We're going to start things off by playing our first piece, Fire Dance. Okay, so that first piece was Fire Dance by American composer and trumpet player Anthony DiLorenzo. It's one of our favorite pieces in the repertoire as it demonstrates the vast capabilities of a brass quintet. Now, we're going to spend some time today talking about the next pillar of success in our series, preparation. Like anything else in life, from sports to your classes in school, preparation is essential to success. Spending time in advance to work out the difficult parts of a task can mean the difference between success and failure. Our goal today is to give you some specific ideas that can help you prepare, both as a musician and in life, and how it helps us directly. For musicians, preparation can come in quite a few different forms. The first is by far the most important, though, personal practice. Each of us in the quintet here has spent literally thousands of hours practicing our instruments on our own to get us to where we are today as members of the Navy Band. That practicing didn't stop when we first got into the band, though. It's a continuous decision we make every day as we're trying to constantly to improve and prepare for whatever performance is coming next. Now, let's just talk about some of the nuts and bolts that we focus on in our individual practice. Probably the three most important things to focus on are: 1, having a great sound; 2, playing with good rhythm; and 3, being in tune. These fundamentals carry over into any ensemble you'll ever play with and any type of music you might play. The great thing is that you can work on each of these through very simple practice techniques like playing long tones, working regularly with a metronome, and using a tuner. Maybe the most important part of individual practice, though, is taking it slow. You build good habits this way and give your brain time to figure out the difficult parts of any passage you're working on. Part of a good practice routine includes listening to great music on your own as well. Listening to a variety of great music is sort of like eating a well-balanced diet. Listening helps to grow your understanding of styles and establish in your mind what a great music should sound like. On that note, we're going to continue with a movement from Victor Ewald's Third Brass Quintet, recorded by a couple of groups that have given us plenty of inspiration in the brass world: the Empire Brass Quintet and Center City Brass Quintet.
Hello, I'm Chief Jason Ayu. Wasn't that a beautiful piece we just performed? Our next piece is in the classical style and was composed by Ludwig Maurer. Now, although he may not sound familiar to you, you probably have heard the name of the most famous composer from this period or style of music, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, what do I mean by style of music? Style is a way of performing music that is based on the characteristics of particular composers during different time periods. Now, what does that mean? Let's go back to Mozart. Mozart was the most popular composer during his lifetime. He composed hundreds of pieces of music. After Mozart died, musicians went back to his music to understand what made Mozart so popular. As they studied his pieces, the same musical ideas kept popping up throughout all his works. They categorized these different characteristics in his music, and those characteristics define the classical style. So the question for us and you is, how do we prepare to play this style of music? We know that the classical style uses lots of scales and light bouncy notes. So to prepare to play this piece, we practiced our scales. And when we rehearsed together, we had to agree upon the length of our notes from phrase to phrase. Another great way to learn a particular style of music is to listen to many recordings of pieces from composers of that time period. You might even be able to find a recording of the piece you are performing or working on done by professional musicians like ourselves to help you gain a better sense of the style. Now, what is unique about this piece by Maurer is that it is one of the earliest compositions we have composed for a brass quintet. We hope you enjoy the first movement from Ludwig Maurer's 3 Little Pieces for Brass Quintet.
Our next piece is a march composed by Henry Fillmore called Noble Men. Fillmore is one of the most popular march composers, with John Philip Sousa maybe being the only second most famous composer of that genre. Fillmore was born into a musical family in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1881. Described as a musically talented and mischievous child, his mother bought him a trombone in hopes that it would give him some life direction. Henry Fillmore took that in stride, but ran off to play in a circus to begin his fruitful musical career. In this march, you will hear Fillmore's showmanship and circus background reflected in this very specific musical style. This march has a style much different than the classical Maurer piece you just heard. The Maurer was originally composed for just 5 brass players, so that music is intended to sound more refined and nuanced. I think of imitating a string quartet. However, with this march, we will try our best to imitate a full band. When you listen to any march, you can expect to hear an upbeat and extroverted style of playing with snappy articulated rhythms and catchy foot-tapping melodies. being able to execute a wide range of styles applies to our personal practice, which is why we work on the fundamentals of playing loud and soft, high and low, fast and slow, and so on. When we meet to rehearse as a group, we bring our concept of these styles to the first rehearsal, and as we work on the music, we are listening to each other and adjusting our own playing to match the finer musical details to achieve the most cohesive and homogeneous approach. Without further ado, enjoy Noble Men by Henry Fillmore.
Hello, I'm Chief Musician James Six, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about listening as it relates to the main theme of our preparation as an ensemble. Listening to recordings helps us to learn the musical selection that we were about to perform. So for instance, we'll listen for tempos, we'll listen for who has a melody at a particular place in the music, and we're also listening to see how our particular part fits into the ensemble. The other thing we do when it comes to listening is we listen in between rehearsals. So we record our rehearsals, and then we listen back to see if the tempo is correct, to make sure our intonation is correct. And we're also listening for balance. Is everyone playing the same dynamic? We're listening for articulation matching. We're listening for the correct style. And we're also listening to see if the recording of our rehearsal matches the original recording that we use for reference. Last of all, when we listen, we're listening for style. And this doesn't just include listening to the style of the piece. We're going to, as it relates to just the brass quintet, we're also listening to examples of the style from professional musicians, such as if we're preparing jazz, we might listen not just to brass quintets playing jazz, we'll also listen to other jazz musicians. The next piece we're going to play for you is an example of jazz. We're going to play Jive for Five by Paul Nagel.
Hi, I'm Chief Musician Carl Lindquist. When playing in a large ensemble like a band or orchestra, we rely on a conductor to organize the rehearsal and decide what and how we're going to play together. In chamber music, the other members of the group, we all collaborate to learn the music and play together. This makes chamber music both fun and challenging. As we talked about earlier, individual practice at home is the very first step to being prepared as a group. We're now going to discuss additional skills that will make your performance a success. One of the best ways to prepare is to listen to a recording of your piece while looking at all of the parts, not just yours. Your teacher in band or orchestra probably uses a score all the time. The score shows everyone's parts on the same page with all the details that go with it. It's not enough to only know your own part. The score shows us what everyone is doing in all the detail and how your part fits with all the others. Many, many performers overlook this step. Use this time to mark your part in pencil with important notes and cues. For example, if you notice, hey, I'm playing the melody with the horn at letter B, write this in your part. It's also crucial that you know who's going to stop and start the group at various points in the piece. As performers, we all have a unique way of cueing entrances and cutoffs, but one thing that they all need to have in common is they need to be clear and consistent. We're now going to demonstrate as we go around the group here and show how everyone has their own way of starting a note. As you'll notice, we also have to make sure that our visual arrangement is the way we want it so that everyone can see. The music and the stand have to be at the appropriate height, and you want clear sight lines around the group. The clearest cue in the world doesn't matter if nobody else is watching. So the most important habit in chamber music is always to make eye contact with the other musicians. The more familiar you are with your music, the more freedom you'll have to look up and check in with the other musicians. Listen now as we play a short phrase that's going to begin the next piece, and I just want you to watch how we make eye contact and give each other visual information. With practice, time, and experience, you can become more and more comfortable and familiar with the sound, style, and visual cues of your fellow musicians. Skills you learn in one piece of music transfer to other pieces that you play, making your rehearsals more productive and efficient. Just like a successful team in sports, the more you invest in practice and preparation, the better and more consistent your performances. Listen as the quintet demonstrates these skills in Chief Wise's arrangement of Danny Boy.
And now, we'd like to take some time to answer some of your questions. Okay, so the first question we have is, where did you go to school? So obviously this is going to be a little different for each of us, so I might pass the microphone around here. Chief Lindquist, why don't we start with you?
All right, first I went to Sandusky High School in Sandusky, Ohio, and then I spent 2 years at 3 different schools. I was at Cincinnati for 2 years, Boston University for 2 years, and Rice University, which is in Houston, Texas.
As we work around here, again, this is Chief Wise. I grew up in Hampshire, Illinois, and then I went to the Eastman School of Music for my undergraduate degree and did a master's also at Rice University, just a little after Chief Lindquist. Let's go to Chief Hicks here.
Again, Chief Hicks. I went to the University of Georgia for my undergrad degree in music, and then I went to DePaul University in Chicago for my master's in music.
Chief Ayub, I went to the University of North Texas for my undergraduate degree and then immediately joined the Dallas Brass and started my professional career after that.
I'm MU1 Hauser. I did my undergrad degree at Baylor University, and I did a master's degree at Southern Methodist University.
Okay, moving on. The next question we have is, do you do anything else in the Navy other than play in the brass quintet? And that's a great question. We all have a variety of duties, but the main thing that we do, we are in what we call the Concert and Ceremonial Department of the United States Navy Band. So that means the bulk of the work that we do are playing concerts and ceremonies around the U.S. Capital Region and then going on a national tour one time a year for about a month or so to a different region of the country. Along with that, we each pick up little things along the way to help the band run. So whether it's booking the concerts that we do or helping with the fitness tests or working as the stage crew, we all have other jobs to help things work. But the main thing we do is we are musicians for the United States Navy. Okay, the next one we have, did you go to boot camp? Yes, indeed, we did all go to boot camp. We all survived. It's certainly a challenge, but I think it's something that anybody with the right attitude and sort of grit to respond to can make it through. And I think for all of us, the privilege of having a job in the Navy Band in Washington, D.C. was a great carrot to have sort of dangling in front of us to look forward to after we finished that 9 weeks at Great Lakes. Okay, another great question. How do you hold your breath so long when you play? This is something that I think comes with experience, but it's a really great question. It's true, as we've grown as musicians, all of us, we've learned how to develop that ability, but it's not like we're world record holders for holding our breath. Really, a big thing about playing a brass instrument is that you have to be efficient with your air. It's not about having a huge quantity of air, but it's about using it in a way that really helps you and you don't run out too fast. It's actually one of the biggest things I see when I work with young musicians is that they often are blowing way too hard and they run out of air so quickly. Okay? So one of the things you can do as you're practicing and working on is trying to use a little bit less air, but getting the same beautiful sound as you do it. It's hard. It takes a little bit of practice and often comes with the help of a great teacher. But it's really something that you work on about being efficient more than anything else, not so much holding your breath. Okay, here's another one. What is the most memorable thing you've done in the Navy Band? And we might pass it around for this one, but I guess I'll start. Two things that stick out in my mind. One was fairly recent, just a little over a year ago. We played for the memorial service for Senator John McCain in the National Cathedral with a brass ensemble with actually several of the guys up here that are playing today. And it was just an absolutely fabulous experience getting to be a part of something so momentous, playing for so many storied people in the history of our country, and especially recent politicians, also someone who is a Navy veteran in Senator John McCain, and getting to honor him in that way. And along with that, something I did with the Brass Quintet now, 10 years ago or so, was the opening of the Flight 93 Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It was a tremendous honor to be there for that occasion.
I was sitting here thinking, and I thought, I'm going to say Shanksville, Pennsylvania last year, which Chief Wise just mentioned, but I will add one other thing about that. It's a very somber place to be. They put us on a bus, a shuttle bus, to go up to the concert, and we're in our dress white uniforms, and we're on a bus with a lot of families, And they were all coming up to us and thanking us for our service and wanting to know, where we were from and asking us all these questions. And it turns out that all the families on this bus were families of those lost on Flight 93. And it was just very humbling that they wanted to talk to us and ask us questions about our service. But we were there really to honor and celebrate with them. So that's been one of the most meaningful things I've done in the Navy Band, definitely.
I would have to say, along again with Shanksville, but one of the great things that I was able to do, we played the ceremony for the 50th anniversary of the Korean War, and to hear the stories of those veterans and the amazing things that they endured in POW camps and then their release was just outstanding. And to be able to play for them and honor them in that regards was just amazing.
Well, I think in addition to what's already been said regarding anything that we play for a 9/11 ceremony or to honor veterans or anyone who's given their lives in service to our country, one of the things that we all love to do, I know, is to play for school groups, music in the school groups. It's always great to go out and inspire young musicians who are maybe considering a career in music, either teaching or performing. And so to get that opportunity to share music with those young musicians, aspiring musicians, is always fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you very much for those questions. And all right. We have one more piece that we're going to play for you today. I hope hearing us play demonstrates how much we've learned over the years as we've honed our skills as musicians and worked on our own preparation as we prepare for any performance that we have coming up. This last piece is supposed to give you the picture of a harrowing train ride working its way through the mountains as you're holding on white knuckle trying to survive. And so I hope we can give you that picture using all that we've done, and I hope you enjoyed our performance today. This is Kevin McKee's Highball on White Pass from the piece called Iron Horse.